I look for moderation out there. Give us an update on the moderation you see at the Sabato Center.
Well, there's an interesting thing going on in the Democratic primary, which is that, of course, Joe Biden has taken this pretty significant polling lead. And he is a candidate who, while I would not call him necessarily moderate, he's probably more moderate than many of the other Democratic presidential candidates right now. And in the Democratic Party, about the electorate is split about 50-50 between self-identified liberals and self-identified moderates. And there are also a small number of conservatives. But Biden is sort of rallying the middle a little bit, or at least the middle of his party. And again, I think it's worked, at least for the time being.
Well, but the time being, let's go to Ohio, which is your neck of the woods. We spoke with the presidential candidate from Youngstown. He's taking a moderate tack with no traction. In your Ohio, does a guy like Biden have a place, or is it going to be polarized through the primaries and through the Democratic convention?
I think what Biden's pitch is, anyway, to states like Ohio and sort of the broader kind of heartland states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin that are going to help decide the election is that, that he could sort of claw back a small but significant number of those voters who voted for Obama twice and then voted for Trump in 2016. I also think, just in terms of the primary electorates in a lot of these states, they aren't necessarily dominated by kind of big city liberals, for lack of a better term, right. And that there are sort of more moderate primary voters. Also, interestingly, African American voters are so important for Democratic politics and in Democratic primaries, and dominate a lot of the southern states and are pretty significant in a lot of other parts of the country. African American voters are not particularly liberal on balance, at least compared to right. some white voters who are generally driving the growth in liberalism in the Democratic Party.
But, Kyle, on what policies could he actually take away votes from the Republicans and from, the Trump administration in particular? As long as the U.S. economy is strong, is it not a second term for President Trump?
I do think historically you'd look at these economic growth numbers and say, oh, well, the incumbent president probably would get reelected, based on relative peace and prosperity, so long as it holds up until the election. That said, you'd also look at the president's approval rating in the low 40s, and that's not really a number that's suggestive of getting reelected. And so it's sort of a tricky thing to look at. I think that what the Democrats are going to try to do is say that whatever economic growth there is, it's sort of unevenly felt, and that Republican policies, by their argument, have sort of helped out people who are already doing pretty well. And I think they would point to the tax cut from 2017 as a policy that really has not been all that popular, and that Democrats are going to argue is sort of targeted toward helping the rich. And so I think that the battle plan against Trump for the 2020 right. Democrats is going to be similar to what Barack Obama tried to do to Mitt Romney in 2012, and I think actually did successfully.
But Kyle, the politics have shifted since then. Do we still think that the American people want a centrist, or actually does Bernie Sanders have a better chance at going after the Trump administration?
It may very well be that the better path to winning these days is to sort of go toward the extremes, the ideological extremes a little bit, as opposed to running closer to the middle. The old political science theory was the sort of the median voter theory, which is essentially that you're supposed to try to capture the voter who ideologically exists right in the middle of the electorate, and that gets you to 50% plus one. But it may be that voters aren't really all that persuadable these days, and that these elections are more based on who can generate the best turnout. And by that standard, maybe the Democrats are better off nominating someone who is more of an ideological progressive / liberal. And of course, Bernie Sanders is competing for that title. I'd say Elizabeth Warren is as well, and several of the other Democratic candidates.